Good morning. Welcome to Saturday, March 18th, 2023. This is Just Parlays with Chris King, and I'm, of course, your host, Chris King. Hopefully everybody had a good week, a good first couple days of what's been a wild NCAA tournament. As we saw for just the second time since the tournament expanded to 64 teams back in the 1980s, a number 16 seed has moved on over a number 1 seed as Purdue couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. It seems like the only thing they hit was the whiteboard in the locker room as they 58 to Fairleigh Dickinson, a team that shouldn't even be in the tournament. Not been for the antiquated rule about transitioning from D2 to D, had won the Northeastern Conference and postseason tournament, but got shafted because this is year 4 of their transition. But still, you got to give credit to the Knights for showing up. New team that hasn't done anything in the tournament since going back to, Gene Keady? We saw them fade again. Zach Edey had a good game. He was 7 of 11 from the floor, but down the stretch, they didn't shoot a 3 or a 2 for the last, 4 or 5 minutes in that game. Instead of feeding the ball to the presumptive player of the year, what was Matt Painter thinking? Purdue was 5 of 26 from three-point range. If you take out Edey, the rest of the team was a combined 12 of 42 from the floor, which breaks down to 28.6%. And that's not going to get it done. They turned the ball over 16 times. They shot 35.8% overall when you factor Edey's numbers in. Mason Gillis was 3 of 10. Fletcher Loyer, 4 of 10. They got nothing from the bench. Jenkins played 26 minutes, went 0 for 3 from the field. Not going to get it done. T-Train aggravated about Memphis. Yeah, there was some bad officiating around. There's been a lot of bad officiating around the tournament. Like you said, the Charleston game was calling a foul down the stretch with 0.2 of a second left made no sense. We saw some missed calls in the Kennesaw State game because Kennesaw State, they still covered, but they had a chance to win that game outright over Xavier. Xavier just doesn't look the same without Zach Fremantle. And you have to wonder how long is their leash at this point in time, because let's face it, when you struggle to beat a 14 seed, things aren't going to look that promising for you as we go forward. We saw some questionable calls. Well, heck, even the West Virginia-Maryland game that started the tournament on Thursday had some questionable officiating as well. Trying to think what other games we saw that had some calls that made no sense. Yesterday, there weren't quite as many close games as we saw on Thursday. We saw Drake score, 1 point in the last 6.5 minutes against Miami. So they ended up losing 63-56. VCU, I know a lot of people were high on them as a 12 seed. If they had played anybody but St. Mary's, they might have had a shot. But St. Mary's is a very disciplined basketball team. They won 63-51. The Connecticut-Providence game seemed to fall off a cliff in the second half. They were at least scoring points in the first half. It was 38-31 at halftime, but it ended up 61-53. Disappointing end of the season for Ed Cooley and the boys. T-Train saying poor guard play you thought it would catch up with Purdue, but not last night. I don't know about Kansas, Arkansas. For as much as they won that game over Illinois looked just terrible. I still like Kansas today. I don't know if how much further they'll go, but I think they can get by an Arkansas team that's been inconsistent. And they try to rush sometimes, and they turn the ball over quite a bit. That's what let Illinois back in that game on Thursday. And speaking of teams that fall apart down the stretch, wouldn't be the same if we didn't talk about Bobby Hurley and the Arizona State Sun Devils, who, led by what? They led by 11 with 16 and a half minutes to go. They were up 8 with 6.5 minutes to go. They were up 7 with 4:38 to go. They were up 5 with 3:32 to go and scored 3 points over the last 3:32. And those came on a three-pointer by DJ Horn with 18 seconds left that tied the game. And then they still forgot to play defense, because they gave a floater with, I believe it was 1.5 seconds or so left. Jacoby Coles with the winning bucket. As the Sun Devils, they played good basketball for a while, but they still lost. And they lost because they turned the ball over and they committed fouls. They sent TCU to the line 27 times. They turned the ball over 13 times. TCU won despite shooting 35.5%. T-Train's on Duke for his pick of the day. That's been in the Discord. And if you haven't been in there, you should get in there, because a lot of good people giving a lot of good information, a lot of good picks. So make sure you check it out. Morning, John. Good to see you. Well, Leo, you can say what you want about Josh Allen, but at least he stays on the field. Can't say that about Lamar Jackson. He's missed, 6 games each of the last couple of years. Right now, you don't know if he's going to show up in Baltimore, if he's going to end up somewhere else. And you got to look at that too. Jackson's been hyped up about one big year, VP, but he doesn't stay healthy. And, that's cost Baltimore down the stretch the last couple seasons. Sure, you can point out he's 45-16 as a starter, but when you miss 5 games the last year. It's tough to be taken as a guy that's going to impact a team in a positive way because you're not on the field. Don't get me wrong, I like Lamar Jackson. He's a good player. But if you can't stay healthy, it's no different than but anyway, what else we see? We saw San Antonio blow a 29-point lead yesterday in the third quarter. It was the biggest comeback in the NBA. Horrible basketball by San Antonio down the stretch. Gave a 9-0 run in the last minute to put the game into overtime. And then, of course, Memphis came back to win it, 126-120. So, I guess we should expect that from the Spurs, but still, when they're up 3 in the final seconds, why wouldn't you commit a foul and avoid giving up an open look in the corner? What else we see last night? Philadelphia blew out Charlotte. Nobody really was overly impressed by that. The Houston Rockets keep suddenly winning basketball games. They beat New Orleans 114-112 with a fourth quarter comeback of their own. Disappointing performance by the Pelicans, who led most of the way. And that just clogs up the bottom of the play-in tournament field in the Western Conference. As you see, just taking a look here. The Lakers now hold the 10th spot. They're tied with the Jazz. New Orleans half a game back of them, and then Portland is 2.5 games behind with a dozen games to go. And then, of course, you look in, New Orleans is in 12th place, but they're only 2.5 games behind the Mavericks for the final guaranteed spot in the West. The Mavs beating the Lakers 111-110 last night. And then you look at the East, and it's just as crowded because you've got the Bulls are in 10th, the Pacers and the Wizards are half a game back, and then Orlando is 4.5 back as they've kind of stumbled a little bit of late. But we're sitting here, and there's 12, 13 games left in the regular season, and 26 teams are still in the playoff hunt. The only 4 out, the Hornets and the Pistons, which those teams have been out since before the new year, and the Rockets and the Spurs, who are probably out before Thanksgiving. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out going down the stretch. Not a lot of hockey last night. We saw the Leafs beat the Hurricanes 5-2. We saw the 5-2 is a popular score around the league. We saw the Blues beat the Caps 5-2. The Flyers beat the Sabres 5-2. And then Anaheim pulled away down the stretch and beat Columbus 7-4 in a game that was only entertaining if you bet the over, because it was over 2.5 minutes into the third period on the total. And then 3 goals in the final 2:37 for Anaheim to break a 4-4 tie and go on to win that one in a battle of two teams going absolutely nowhere. But sometimes, that's where you find your best values. Here's a big question, because we were talking, I saw this with my brother last night. Which was the worst showing by a 1 seed? Was it Purdue last night, or was it Virginia against UMBC 5 years ago? Because everybody looks at the score and saw UMBC beat Virginia by 20 in that game. But, this was a Purdue team that, like I said, they had the presumptive Wooden Player of the Year and Edey. They're playing a team that shouldn't even be in the tournament. And they just played miserable basketball. To me, UMBC was at least a team that earned their spot to be there. And they played probably flawless basketball. In this game, Purdue basically gave it to them. I was less than impressed. And you have to wonder, what does that mean going forward for Matt Painter? Is he going to keep his job? I mean, Purdue has not had any kind of success in the tournament in recent years. And you have to wonder, when do they say, well, that's enough for me? Because you look, and the Boilermakers, just going to take a look here at their thing, because I haven't, last year they went out in round 2. The year before that, they went out in round 1. They last made the Elite 8 in 2018-19. They made the Sweet 16 2 years before that, but that's it. First round loss in 2015, second round loss in 2014-2015. They missed the tournament the 2 years before that. So Painter has only made it to the second weekend, twice, 4, 5, 6 times, and he's only made it to the regional final once since taking over the team in 05-06. Say what you want about Gene Keady, but, at least he got his team consistently in the tournament before he stepped down. And, that was back in the days when it was a little tougher to get into the field. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. We've seen a lot of coaches get fired. Rick Pitino talking about he doesn't know what his plan is going forward now after Iona played really good for a half and then got absolutely trucked in the second half by UConn. I'm sure T-Train was happy about that one. as the Gales. UConn is my pick of the day yesterday on the premium side, so it was good to see them play much better in the second half because the first half was miserable. IT and confirm beat SDSU. Well, we learned anything from the from Furman, and Furman's a big deal here because it's about 15 minutes or so from other than Clemson, South Carolina. It was even better to hear about something Clemson lost in the NIT after being favored by 17.5 points against Morehead State. Furman can beat teams because you have to figure they won that game despite Mike in half, so he wasn't in there down the stretch. It's going to be an interesting game. San Diego State's a good defensive team. They're excellent on that end of the floor. They did a good job handcuffing Charleston down the stretch. Of course, they were helped somewhat by the officiating. The problem that they're going to have to deal with if you're Furman is, can you get enough threes to go down? Because you look at Bob Ritchie's team is a 3-point shooting team. They shoot 46.8% of their attempts from the floor, or 46.5, I'm sorry, percent of their attempts from the floor are from beyond the arc. That's the 12th highest rate in the country, which is strange because you look at the numbers, and when they shoot inside the arc, they lead the nation at 59.6%. Problem is they don't shoot a bunch of twos. And facing a San Diego State team that has the ability to stifle teams from the outside, as we saw them make life miserable for Charleston, is going to be tough. San Diego State 6th in the nation in 3-point defense, holding opponents to 29% from beyond the arc. Do I think Furman can win? It's possible. Will they? Like I said, it's going to depend if the threes go down or not, and whether Trammell and Matt Bradley can get things done offensively for San Diego State. I'm with T-Train. I would sprinkle a little bit on Furman. I think they're getting, 5.5 is what it was last night. Let me see if the numbers changed, because God knows things change all the time. Looks like it's sitting still at 5.5. I see it's 6 at DraftKings now. I can see Furman hanging in there. I don't know if they'll win it outright. This could be another one where either San Diego State gets bailed out by the officials, like they were against Charleston. It's going to be tough. I would lean Furman in the points just because San Diego State's not a big offensive team. Vandy and Michigan. It depends. Are we going to see the Michigan team that showed up against Toledo? Or are we going to see the Michigan team that played most of the year in the Big Ten? My big concern with Vanderbilt is that they don't have Robbins to contend with Hunter Dickinson. The one plus for Vanderbilt is, they don't turn the ball over much, and Michigan doesn't force turnovers. If they can get another good showing from Ezra Mangin, who's played out of his mind the last few games, and Jordan Wright has a good game, and Stute, they've got a shot. I mean, the game's at Vanderbilt, which works in their favor. They're a very good team at home. It's a tight line in that one, too. I think Vanderbilt's favored by a point or a point and a half. Michigan just 3-7 as a road team this year. Yeah, I see it's 1.5 or it's up to 2 at some books. But you look at Michigan's road record this year, they lost to Michigan State, they lost to Iowa, they lost to Maryland, they lost to Penn State, they lost to Wisconsin. They beat Rutgers. They beat Northwestern. And they beat Minnesota. And if you're going to hang your head on the fact that you beat Minnesota as one of your road wins, you got some problems because Minnesota was a terrible basketball team. I can see Vanderbilt pulling out. They'll have to keep Dickinson contained and make somebody else beat them. We saw time and time again that in crunch time, Michigan, in close games, would find ways to lose. You look at some of their losses this year. Lost by 2 at home to Virginia. Lost by 4 to Kentucky on a neutral floor. Lost to North Carolina by 4 in a semi-away game that was played in Charlotte. Lost by 6 to Michigan State. Lost by 9 in overtime to Iowa. Lost by 6 to Maryland. Lost by 5 to Purdue. Lost by 1 to Indiana. Lost by 5 to Wisconsin. Lost by 4 in double overtime to Illinois. Lost by 2 to Indiana in overtime. So Michigan finds ways to steal defeat from the jaws of victory, and they do it often. So if Vanderbilt can rattle them and hang around and hang around and hang around and make life miserable for Dickinson and everybody else, Vanderbilt can win that game, especially playing in their own gym. You know, there's people are excited to see Vanderbilt playing in any kind of postseason tournament, given how poorly they've been in recent years. You look at the Commodores in recent seasons, and it was a train wreck. First time they've been in any kind. Last time they were in the NCAA tournament was 2016-17 when they went out in the first round. They hadn't made it past the first round of the tournament since 2011-2012 when they made it to what was, quote, the third round then, back because the first 4 was considered an actual round. But it's going to be some interesting stuff to see how things go going forward. I like Vanderbilt there. And have a ton of success. Out of Dickinson and Jed Howard, because you look at the rest of the guys and you're like, well, who are you concerned about? Are you concerned about Doug McDaniel? Are you concerned about Terrence Williams? Are you concerned about Kobe Buffkin? Not really. I mean, they're not a bunch of offensive weapons, to say the least. They would have bet in that game in London back in December, because that would have done them some big favors. They would have actually had a senior to provide some leadership on that team. But I digress. Before we move on don't forget to like and subscribe, ring the bell so you know when we're here. In case you don't know, it's 9 a.m. on Saturdays to talk about what's going on. It's hard to believe that next week we'll have the Sweet 16 and all that. By next Saturday, we'll be down to the Elite 8. And in 2 weeks, winds of change are blowing as usual, making for entertaining times as well. But yeah, make sure you ring the bell, like and subscribe, tell your friends, tell your neighbors' friends, tell your friends' neighbors, all that good stuff. For the week, for premium plays, if you enter the code, you can save 60%. And you can save 60% on parlays, or you can save 60% on individual game picks, or if you want to pick up a package for any sport for the season or whatever else, use the promo code, save yourself some money. We're 19-12 overall on the week on the individual side. It was 4-3 yesterday because I got to stop picking totals because I expected more points out of Memphis and FAU. I also expected more points Thursday from Missouri and Utah State, and those teams couldn't hit threes to save their lives. Kansas State and UConn and Cleveland all were victorious, which was nice. On the premium side, we've had a couple 4-teamers come through this week, so we're on the plus side of the equation there as well. So jump on board, make some money, and let's, as Unknown Entity says, let's go with about 47 O's. Fernando, Memphis screwed a lot of people yesterday. Like T-Train was saying, officiating didn't help, but Memphis needed to play better fundamental basketball than they did. Yeah, well, we were talking Thursday, T-Train, and you you weren't concerned about the point total in the Utah State Missouri game, but like you said, once that game started, neither one of those teams could hit a three to save their lives. And but yeah, the UConn Iona game started strong and built from there, especially in the second half when UConn scored 50 points to roll that one away. Well, Alabama covered the spread against Maryland. I'll say this about Alabama. They hung 96 points in a game where Brandon Miller scored nothing. Now, I don't think they're going to score 96 points today against Maryland. The Terps played some good defense after, starting absolutely miserably offensively in that game. It was 19-4 or 19-6 midway through the first half before they started coming back. The key for Alabama in this game is going to be keeping Bediako and Clowney out of foul trouble, because that's what triggered Maryland's comeback against West Virginia. Is they got Bell in foul trouble. He fouled out in 11 minutes. But if you keep Bediako and Clowney out of foul trouble and keep them on the floor and make things difficult for Missouri inside, Alabama should be in good shape. The big problem for Maryland is they're facing an Alabama team that leads the nation in effective field goal percentage defense at 41.4%. You look also at Alabama defensively, number 1 in 2-point defense, number 3 in 3-point defense. They lead the nation in rebounding. They're third in overall field goal percentage defense at 37.1%. And let's face it, Maryland is not an offensive powerhouse by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I get that everybody talks about, well, they got a new coach now. Well, they've had, 3 coaches in the last 3 years. And I was never impressed with Kevin Willard at Seton Hall. And you look, Maryland 158th field goal percentage, or 207th in scoring. They're 253rd in rebounding. They can get annihilated on the glass. They don't shoot threes all that well. They're 242nd in three-point shooting at 33%. Maryland's hope, if they want to hang in this game, is they want to grind the clock and eat possessions. You look, and like T-Trade said, it depends which Alabama team you get. Alabama 5th in the country in tempo. Maryland 320th. Maryland is going to have to chew up 20, 23, 25 seconds every possession. They're going to have to shoot the ball relatively well. I can see Alabama winning this one by 10 or 12, just because they'll get some transition buckets, and I don't think Miller's going to score 0. My bigger concern with a 1 seed is actually Houston, because they didn't look good against Northern Kentucky. Marcus Sasser is pretty aggravated, that groin injury. He says he's going to play. How good is he going to be? I mean, he played, 14 minutes against the Norse. He didn't play against Memphis in the AAC tournament title game. How effective is he going to be? And that's going to be a point of concern. Auburn is a very physical team, and they can play pretty good defense themselves. Will Houston be able to dig up enough offense if Sasser put away an Auburn team that has to be good after beating Iowa? Now, Iowa's another story where you've got a coach that can't get out of the first weekend, but that's a different story, right? Like teacher said, what percentage is he going to be at? And that's a big thing that you have to worry about at this point. Because to quote Apollo Creed in Rocky 3, there is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow. Either you win or you're done. Three for the money. Yeah, TJ, UConn's starting to look good. Dan Hurley needs to keep quiet, and coach will all be fine. Well, yeah, that'd be nice. Connecticut has been a major impact player. Now, let's face it, Sanogo had probably the game of his life yesterday. But the last couple of years under Hurley, they lost in the first round. The 2 years before that, well, actually the 4 years, if you count the 2 years with Kevin Ollie, they didn't make the field at all. So you go back to 2013-14 when they won the title, was the last time that they made it past round 2 heading into this year. So it should be an interesting game with St. Mary's because UConn is a good offensive team, and we know how well St. Mary's plays defensively. That's going to be quite the clash in round 2 tomorrow. So, that UConn will have to adjust accordingly for that matchup. Winnipeg over Nashville. Let's face it, Winnipeg is a team that's trying to hang in the National Hockey League's Western Conference playoff picture, which every time you turn around gets more and more confusing. If you indulge a rant, I think that, the stupid two wild card team thing is idiotic. I don't like that concept. I liked it better back in the days when there was 21 teams in 4 divisions, and the top 4 teams in each division made the playoffs, and that's how they went instead of this crossover crap and everything else. Winnipeg holding the second wild card spot right now by 3 points over the Flames. Nashville is 4 points back, so is a motivated Winnipeg team because Nashville has 3 games in hand at this point. So picking up a win here would be crucial for Winnipeg. Connor Hellebuyck's supposed to get started against UC Saros. Nashville, I think they forgot to get the memo about the fact that they traded away a bunch of players to try to rebuild for the future. So they're not supposed to be winning games right now. Ultimately, I think Winnipeg is a little more desperate to make the postseason than Nashville is. And I'll take the Jets. The Sacramento Kings. Talking about surprising teams around the world of the National Basketball Association. Going into the year, we talked about Sacramento, and we're like, ooh, Sacramento, who cares? Because let's face it, the Kings have been a laughingstock in the NBA for since they moved to Sacramento. You just take a look here at the Kings. I mean, they had a couple good seasons at the start of the 2000s. They lost the Western Conference Finals in 01-02. But their last winning season was 05-06 when they were 44-38 under Rick Adelman. They had losing seasons every year since. Until this year, their win the other night against the Bulls gave them 42 wins, so they'll have a winning record for the first time since 05-06 this year. They're facing a Wizards team that's playing the second game of a back-to-back and a Washington team that was just waxed by 23 points by the Cavaliers. I'm surprised the line is only 2. I hadn't seen any injuries that I needed to be aware of. I'll take a quick look and make sure I'm not missing anything. Like Sacramento decided they were going to bench their entire lineup. I take note that, I do these the night before, so that way I don't have to be up at dark 30 to try and put it together. Okay, it's 2.5. So it hasn't moved all that much, 2.5 or 3 at most books. And you look, the injuries that are being reported for Sacramento at the moment, nothing to write home about. Trey Lyles questionable with a shoulder injury. Kevin Huerter questionable with a leg. And Richaun Holmes is ill. All questionable. But still, we're talking about a Washington team that's coming off second game of a back-to-back here. Sacramento's won 5 of 6, 8 of their last 10. Washington has lost 4 of 5 and 6 of their last 8. The Wiz is not exactly a team that impresses people when it comes to playing in the second game of back-to-back situations this season. I get the Wiz are trying to hang in the playoff picture, but it's tough to play Friday and then play Saturday in the NBA, especially against a team like Sacramento who will run you into the ground. I think the Kings should cover the line in that game. And the Bruins over the Wild, that's an early game. A lot of early afternoon hockey today. The Bruins, let's face it, they're a very, very, very good hockey team. They've got depth. They've got goaltending. They can score. They can make life miserable for opposing teams. Don't get me wrong, I don't like the Bruins by any stretch of the imagination, but you have to respect what they've done. 51-11-5, kind of hard to argue with that. Minnesota 7-0-3 in their last 10, but it's tough to go against a Bruins team that has been playing good hockey all year long as opposed to just lately. I'll take Boston in that game. That takes us to talking about teams that we don't usually talk about. The Southern Utah Thunderbirds. That's right. They're playing North Alabama. And you're like, I didn't even know there was a North Alabama. Well, there is. A team that loves to run and play, with Todd Simon there. They rallied for that game where they're down by about 3,000 points against Utah Valley in the WAC tournament. And then ran out of gas against Grand Canyon a lot. 12th in the nation in free throw attempts per field goal attempt rate. They shoot the ball pretty well. North Alabama, give Tony Pujol credit. They're 18-14 despite being ninth in effective field goal percentage defense and 336th in turnover percentage forced. They're also 344th in three-point defense. Basically, they got into this field because they had gone on a stretch where they won 9 of 10 games from mid-January to mid-February. They come in with 3 straight losses. They lost by 13 to Kennesaw State. They lost by 9 to Jacksonville State. Those games were at home. In the ASUN tournament, they lost by 25 to Eastern Kentucky. They haven't played since February 28th. So you're talking 2.5 weeks at this point since they've actually had a game that meant anything. It's tough to get up to play basketball after that stretch. And it's going to be a challenge for North Alabama to slow down Southern Utah. I think the Thunderbirds should get the win there. I appreciate that, T-Train. we do put a lot of work in. I mean, it was tough when I used to do it 5 days a week because, especially in baseball season, when there's only so much you can work with. But this time of year, it's entertaining and it's fun. And I like doing this stuff. I like, getting to interact with everybody. I like getting to talk about different games and things like that. And I appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to be here. I know it's early in the morning on Saturday. Normally, I wouldn't be awake or I'd be doing something else. But I like being here. I like getting a chance to talk about stuff with you guys and have a good time. The Islanders over the Sharks. We talk about teams that need wins. Meet the New York Islanders. They enter today tied with Pittsburgh for the 2 wild card spots. Florida is 3 points behind with 2 games in hand. Washington is 5 points back. Buffalo is 6 points back. The Islanders need some wins, facing a bad team in the San Jose Sharks, who have already been eliminated from playoff contention. They're the only team in the West to be completely eliminated at this point. Don't get me wrong. The Blackhawks and the Ducks are right behind them on the elimination train. But still, this is a game that the Islanders have to have. And I think it's going to be interesting. But I think the Islanders' Sorokin is a lot better goaltender than whether it's Reimer or Kakkonen for the Sharks. And let's be honest. Like we said, San Jose, a team going nowhere, quick, fast, and in a hurry. Speaking of quick, fast, and in a hurry, what happened to the Indiana Pacers? About a month or so ago, we were talking about how the Pacers were exceeding expectations. They were in the playoff picture. They looked like they might actually do something, and then, the wheels fell off because they were 23-18 on January 8th. Okay, so it was a little longer than I thought. Then they promptly lost 7 in a row and 11 of 12. And if you keep going, it was 16 of 18. So they had dropped to 25-34 after losing to Utah on February 13th. They've been better since that point. They've gone 9-4 in their last 13. They're coming off a win over Milwaukee the other day. But this is still a team that lost by 20 to Detroit on Monday night. And we know how Detroit has, done nothing. And let's be honest, they scored 84 points in the second half of that game against the Bucks. That's not something you're going to see them do on a regular basis. You're not going to see them have 8 guys in double figures. They're not going to shoot 55.7% from the field. They're not going to hit 22 threes. And there's, I get Philadelphia played yesterday, but it was a romp for them, so they didn't have to overload their guys. They beat Charlotte by 39 in a game that, sadly you say 39 and it still wasn't that close. Nobody played more than 31 minutes, and that was Harden, who, had probably stayed in to get a triple-double because he had 11 points, 11 rebounds, and 10 assists. But Embiid had 38 and 13 and 5 assists, 4 blocks, and 29 minutes. Tobias Harris only played 23 minutes. PJ Tucker, who doesn't score anyway, played 22. And Maxey played 29. So they didn't have to play their starters for 40-plus minutes in that game, so they'll still be in decent shape rest-wise. And that should help them take care of an Indiana team that's, hanging around, but nobody's going to take them seriously. And finally, the LA Kings over the Vancouver Canucks. The Kings traded away Jonathan Quick. They traded him to Columbus. Columbus traded him to Vegas, so he's now right back in the same division. The Kings, 89 points. They're 8-1-1 in their last 10. They're 1 point behind Vegas for the top spot in the Pacific. Meanwhile, Vancouver, Well, they won 5 in a row before losing the other day. Unfortunately, they're still 16 points out of the second wildcard spot. And let's face it, Vancouver gives up a truckload of goals. 255 goals on the season. The two teams in the West that have given up more, Anaheim, 281, San Jose, 265. If you throw in the Eastern Conference, Columbus has given up 260. Montreal has given up 250. They're 4 of the 5 worst teams in the National Hockey League. So you're not in good company, Vancouver. The Kings have played very well in their offensively. They're a motivated team. They're out to prove a point. James, I appreciate the compliment. We try our best to make it entertaining and to hopefully know what we're talking about. Sometimes things don't go our way because something inevitably happens that's stupid, like teaching and the officiating with Charleston, San Diego State. Or a team forgets at what time the game started, like Oral Roberts the other day. But, we do our best to, give you the best information that we have. Morning, Nathan. Good to see you. Nathan saying Rock Chalk Jayhawks. Yeah, like I said, I like them against Arkansas. I just don't know if you can trust Ricky Council to not throw up horrible shots at critical moments or for them to turn the ball over. They turned it over quite a bit against Illinois the other day. And what helped them in that game was that Illinois kept shooting threes even though they weren't going in. But you look at that game, they turned it up. They were credited supposedly with 11 turnovers. It seemed like a hell of a lot more than that. They were 3 of 11 from 3. They shot 40% from 2. They averaged 0.94 points per possession. It's just unimpressive when you look at the numbers. Council, yeah, he had 18 points. 11 of them came at the free throw line. He might have a tougher time getting to the stripe that much against Kentucky team that's a little bit more disciplined. And I say a little bit. I mean, we don't know if Bill Self's going to coach. At least as of last night, he was marked as day-to-day. But, Kentucky, they didn't have to overtax their guys against Howard in the opening round. They still played guys for a bunch of minutes. Jalen Wilson played 33. Harris played 35. Grady Dick played 32. But, this is a Kansas team. They can go 8 deep with Pettiford and Yusufu, who was – you have to wonder, does he regret leaving Drake, where he would have been a relatively big name, playing alongside Tucker DeVries and Roman Penn to go to Kansas, because since he's gone to Kansas before the 2022 season, he doesn't play nearly as many minutes. I mean, he shot the ball 80 times last year in 34 games, played about less than 8 minutes a game. This year he's playing a little more. He's playing about 12, 13 minutes a game. I mean, when he was playing at Drake, he was playing 24, 25 minutes. And, going into last year, he probably would have had more of an impact. But they say hindsight is 20/20. Yeah, the refs have been bad across the tournament. Like I said, if you go back to the very first game when the ball clearly went out off of Maryland, and they said they couldn't find a video footage that would overturn the call on the floor. It's just been bad all the way around, and it's something that, we bitch about officiating in every sport. People bitch about it in the NBA. They bitch about it in the NHL. You've got Angel Hernandez in Major League Baseball, among others. So it's one of those things we have to watch out for, unfortunately, as far as that goes. And that takes us to the shot in the dark. Now, remember, you don't have to play all of these at once. As my former co-host Jim Williams used to say, it's like a Chinese menu. You could take a couple from column A, a couple from column B, mix in a couple from the 3-teamer or the 4-teamer, mix in some of your own, put it together yourself. It all works. Start with Missouri over Princeton. Princeton, all right, CB Buckner. Yeah, he's bad too. I also remember, the late Eric Gregg, where his strike zone started, about 3 feet outside the dugout and ended at the hot dog vendor in the third row. Princeton, I got to give them credit. They played well defensively against Arizona, made life miserable. I just don't know if Princeton has the depth to hang with a Missouri team that's going to try to run them into the ground. And, Missouri, Kobe Brown, Des Moines Hodge, Sean East has been there before. Nick Honor has been there before. Golston is a senior. There's a lot of experience on that team, which is something that can't be overlooked when you get to this time of the year. Does Princeton, who doesn't force turnovers, and let's face it, they're 348th in the country in turnover percentage forced defensively, can they find a way to steal enough possessions against a Missouri team that, A, doesn't turn the ball over? They're 40th in turnover percentage offensively at 15.9%. They shoot the ball well. Low percentage. They can hit the three. And they force turnovers. Missouri 5th in the nation in turnover percentage defensively, 24.3%. They're second in the nation in steal percentage. Where they have issues is giving up offensive rebounds, but can off misses to make Missouri pay, and I just don't know if they've got that in them. Beating Arizona is one thing because Arizona played probably their worst game all year, and they got nothing from their guards. Kriisa was 1 of 7. Courtney Ramey didn't hit a 3. 2 shots. Larson was in foul trouble. And they turned it over 13 times. I don't know if you're going to get that out of Missouri. The Tigers are very and that's, a major factor as to why they're still here. I think Missouri will end up winning the game by 8 or 9. James saying his gut says Northwestern beats UCLA as an upset special. That's going to be a good call. I mean, anything's possible. We've seen Northwestern play good basketball all season. I mean, that's another team where you thought go back to the start of the year and you're like, well, Northwestern is going to suck again. You can set your watch by it, and here they are in the tournament. They beat Boise State fairly soundly the other day. A lot of with UCLA is, will the Bruins be able to stay healthy. That we know what an issue that's been being without Clark, and then Bona getting banged up in the Pac-12 tournament. He hasn't played the last couple of games. Is he going to show up today? We don't know. Because you'll look at their other two big men, you got Etienne and Nwuba, and neither one of them are very good offensively. They don't contribute much. They're not much of a threat. And that puts more pressure on Yaquez and Yaquez and Campbell and Amari Bailey. And, it wouldn't surprise me to see Northwestern. T-Train saying UCLA, Kansas, and Houston might be fool's gold. Yeah, Houston. I took Auburn in the points when I wrote the game up, just because I don't know what to expect from Sasser. I don't know what to expect, period, from Houston after seeing how poorly they looked, or they played against Northern Kentucky. I mean, Northern Kentucky, don't get me wrong, they're a decent defensive basketball team, but 63 points, and you shot 60% from two, but you still shot 16 threes. And let's face it, if Northern Kentucky isn't 5 of 33 from 3-point range and shoots a few more twos, they might be in that game down the stretch instead of being down, 8 or 10 points late in the game. But like I said, I'm concerned about Sasser. In the case of Houston, I just don't know what to expect from him. And that's going to be a big issue. The Avalanche over the Red Wings, that game starts at, I can't remember if it's noon or 1. But let's face it, the Red Wings, they're probably a year ahead of schedule. They've kind of faded lately. They're 2-7-1 in their last 10. They've fallen 9 points off the pace in the wild card race. Colorado still battling in the Central Division. Dallas has 87 points. Minnesota has 86. Colorado has 84. They have 1 game in hand on Minnesota, 2 on the Stars. The Avs have won 4 in a row, including a 5-4 win over Ottawa in the second game of a back-to-back after they beat Toronto 2-1 in a shootout earlier this week. They've had good success against the Atlantic Division because they beat Montreal, Toronto, and Ottawa in back-to-back games. They've won 4 in a row coming into this one. Detroit just, like I said, they were playing well earlier. They've kind of come back to earth. I'll take the Avs in that one. Duke and Tennessee under 128. Did anybody watch the 2 games that those teams played this week? I get that Duke blew out Oral Roberts. They still only scored 74 points. They totaled 125. Tennessee, that game was terrible against Louisiana. 58-55. Nobody's going to confuse Louisiana with being, an elite defensive team, especially coming out of the Sun Belt. And Tennessee couldn't do jack offensively. They missed 9 free throws. They turned the ball over 18 times. They averaged 0.87 points per possession. I don't expect a lot of points here. T-Train, I don't know if you have a thought about that. But both those teams pretty good when it comes to playing defense. Just taking a quick look. Duke 21-13-1 to the under this season. Tennessee 19-14-1 to the under. Duke's gone under in 4 of their last 6. 5-3-1 to the under for Tennessee in their last 9. I'm not expecting offensive fireworks all of a sudden in this game. I think if you get to 65, you're probably in good shape. Texas over Penn, because you look at Penn State. Penn State, a good 3-point shooting team. The question is, can they shoot the three against Texas? I know that they had a good time shooting against Texas A&M. But we just saw shut down a Colgate team that led the nation in 3-point shooting and held the Raiders to 3 of 15 from beyond the arc in their win Thursday. Marcus Carr and Dylan Disu and Timmy Allen hitting 7 threes himself for Texas in the win over the Raiders. Penn State, like I said, they shoot the ball well. They don't turn it over. They're a good 3-point shooting team. But they have to hope those threes go in because they're 10th in the nation. 47.1%. They hit 13 of 22 from 3 against Texas A&M, but that's Texas A&M style. They pack inside and force you and dare you to shoot threes, and that was the perfect storm for Penn State. Meanwhile, you're looking at a Texas team that will actually get out there and defend, which will make things a little bit tougher for the Nittany Lions. Penn State doesn't get offensive rebounds. They have the third lowest offensive rebound percentage in the nation, third lowest free throw for the field goal attempt ratio in the nation. I think Texas should be able to come up with the victory in that contest just because Penn State isn't going to have that much success. Good to see you, T-Train. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you have a good rest of the day. Enjoy the afternoon. Oh yeah, I would, Nathan. I would definitely look for the under in the San Diego State Furman game, especially if you can get it at 140. I saw it at 137.5 last night. New Jersey over Florida. I don't have a ton of faith in the Florida Panthers. Yeah, they scored 7 goals in the first period the other day. That was against Montreal. That's like playing NHL 94 against the Sharks expansion team. They're not going to score that many goals against New Jersey. I know they want to win the game because they're 3 points back at the wild card spot. It's tough to beat New Jersey, especially when New Jersey is the road team. New Jersey just 19-13-3 at home. On the road, they're the Bruins, 25-4-4. I'll take the Devils. Oh, good. T-Train's wearing his ref shirt, so maybe we'll get better officiating. Now, remember, folks, if your team loses due to bad officiating, next week blame T-Train for wearing a ref shirt. The Raptors over the Timberwolves. Minnesota coming off a double overtime loss last night to the Bulls. So they're playing the second game of a back-to-back situation. Anthony Edwards was injured in that game. I'm going to take a quick look and see if I have any updates as to what his status is. I'm going to guess he's probably not going to play. Okay, he left the arena wearing a protective boot after spraining his ankle. So I'm guessing you're not going to see him on the floor tonight, which makes it even tougher for Minnesota in this contest. Because let's face it, Minnesota hasn't had Karl Anthony Towns since the end of November. And that's been good for Edwards, but without him, it's going to be a challenge for Minnesota, especially playing this game of back-to-back here. The Raptors have won 6 in a row at home. I'll take them in that situation. Furman over San Diego State. T-Train was talking about at the beginning of the show, and Bill asked about it. I think it's going to be an interesting game. I just think that Furman may not win the game, but I think they can hang close enough because San Diego State's not going to bowl anyone over offensively by any stretch of the imagination. They're a mediocre at best offensive unit. And we saw them struggle against Charleston, who's a team that's not all that great defensively either. So in a game like that, I'll take the points. Edmonton over Seattle, or in Seattle over 6.5. You like goals? You like hockey? Beat these two teams because when they play, you get a lot of lighting the lamp. Just to give you an idea, this game starts at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. These teams have met in their history now 6 times. The total over 5-0-1. In those 6 games, total number of goals 7, 7, 8, 9, 7, 7. So when these teams meet, goals follow. Edmonton 41, 22, and 6 to the over this season. Seattle's still been a little bit to the under 33, 30, and 5. But like I said, when these two teams meet, overs follow. The over 2-0-1 in the 3 meetings this season. I don't see things slowing down. Edmonton 6-1-1 to the over in their last 8 division games, 8-2 to the over in their last 10. Or I'm sorry, 5-0 in their last 5 on Saturdays. Seattle, the overs hit in each of their last 4 at home, 4 of their last 5 overall. Look for plenty of pucks in the net, as neither one of these teams overwhelming in the defensive end of the ice. The Arizona Coyotes over the Blackhawks. I've had some success with the Coyotes this week. I took them over Calgary earlier in the week when they're I think it was plus 197 when I placed the wager on that one, and they won in overtime. I had them the other day against Vancouver at plus 153. The Arizona game actually closed at plus 221. They beat Vancouver at plus money. They beat Minnesota at plus money on Sunday. They went to overtime against Colorado last Saturday. 5-0-1 in their last 6. They've been plus money in all of those games. They're 5-0-2 in their last 7 if you go back to an overtime loss to New Jersey. So the Coyotes, despite going nowhere, have played good hockey of late. Beat a Chicago team that's on the road here. The Blackhawks just 10-20-3 on the road. Arizona 19-11-3 on home ice. I'll take the Coyotes, even being a favorite for once in that contest. And then the Heat over the Bulls. Chicago, like we said, they played in that double overtime. Had yesterday off after beating Memphis on Thursday. Beating Memphis on Wednesday. So they had 2 days off. So they should be rested. Chicago going to be a bit tired after logging some heavy minutes with their guys last night. This will be the 3rd game in 4 nights for the Bulls. You look at the minutes last night, and Vucevic played almost 46 minutes. Levine played 46 and a half. That's a big toll for those guys. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're a big factor why the Bulls won because those 3 guys combined for 109 points. But what are they going to have left in this game? Especially against a Heat team that's very physical on the defensive end of the floor. But that will do it for today's show. Like I said, make sure you like and subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we're here. Like we said, it's 9 a.m. on Saturdays, 9 a.m. Eastern. 8 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Mountain, 6 a.m. Pacific. Check your local listings for Hawaii. But thanks for being here. Like I said, use the promo code on the bottom. You can save 60% on premiums. That's all the premiums across the board. If you get premiums from Mason or Dave or Ben or the Steamroller or whoever. But, use the promo code, save yourself some money. Enjoy your afternoon. Enjoy day one of round 2 of the NCAA tournament. Don't forget the XFL's on, in case you're into that. The NHL, the NBA, it's all there. It's a sports smorgasbord. But enjoy the afternoon. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next week for another exciting episode of Just Parlays on the Winners and Winers Network. I'm Chris King. So long, everybody.